All right, I'm excited to introduce Christina Armour from the Business Council on Climate Change, better known as BC3, to share a primer on solar technology and incentivizing residential solar for homeowners and developers.
Great. Hello. I wasn't too sure if I should say good morning, good afternoon. We're right there on the cusp, but I'm still drinking coffee, so good morning. Excellent. Well, again, my name is Christina Armour. I'm with the Business Council on Climate Change. To make it easy, BC3. I'm our program director, also our SunShares manager. BC3, I'll be talking today a little bit about SunShares itself, but real quick, we are a local nonprofit here in San Francisco. We were founded about 10 years ago through the San Francisco's Environmental Department, really looking at a way to bring together organizations and institutions who are normally isolated from each other, working on sustainability issues. So we work with some of the top corporate employers here in the Bay Area, Google, Genentech, Salesforce, Autodesk, LinkedIn, just to kind of give you an idea of our core members. We bring folks together around the table to not just talk about the solutions to the sustainability issues, but how can we collaborate and kind of scale up our solutions within that. So SunShares is a great example of this. SunShares is a program that we started to administer last year. 2016 was our first year taking on the SunShares program. We had previously participated in SunShares, organizing our members around it. So SunShares is a limited time group buy program to procure renewable energy. And we make it easy and affordable for residents to install solar or purchase a zero emission vehicle. And we do this by pooling our group buying power. Take a step back and kind of look at why SunShares is around and kind of the role that we're serving here in the community. So I've been hearing a lot today about solar. We're talking about different mandates, and I think it's also important to talk about some of the larger goals that we're tying into. It's pretty clear, I'm speaking, kind of preaching to the choir on this, but California, we are such a bubble in terms of our innovation, our advancement of technology, and just our place in the market. So I think we are in a really, really exciting, innovative time as we're really keeping ourselves there at the forefront as leaders in the renewable energy industry. California, as we know, has a pretty lofty goal of getting 50% of our state's electricity from renewables by 2030. San Francisco, I think, has created their own kind of even more loftier local goal, if you're not familiar with their 0, 50, 100 roots goals. 0%, zero waste, 50% of our transportation taken on alternative modes, and then 100% of our electricity coming from renewable energy. And this is exactly where SunShares fits in. A little bit to the transportation, I'll talk about that in a minute, but mostly to the renewable energy. So again, some really, really big goals that we're trying to achieve, and I believe that our role within government and even with companies as we are setting out to achieve these goals is we need to create access then to helping with the communities to help them achieve these goals with us. And this is exactly, again, where SunShares comes in to create that easy and affordable access to installing solar or purchasing a zero-emission vehicle. As mentioned earlier, I think it's fair to say that solar and EVs, they almost go together like peanut butter and jelly. You know, they're great on their own, but they're even better together. And so many of the programs that we're talking about today, again, solar is that foundation. And as we're talking about electric water heaters and pumps, we still need solar to ensure that that whole building is brought to net zero energy. With that said, I think it's important to start off just knowing what we're dealing with. So as we're talking about going solar, here in this room, some of us are more experts than others, but we're really involved in the technicalities of these conversations. We might not be experts, but we have those resources closer to our fingertips, and we're a little bit more in the know. But as we start talking to just the average, everyday, common Joe or Sue, they're not as privy on these issues. And there seems to be one of the big barriers that we're seeing out there in the solar industry is a lot of confusion in the market. There are so many solar companies. This has been recently referred to me as the solar coaster. There are so many companies out there. How do you know who to choose? They're all talking about these really technical products, solar panels, inverters, microinverters, string inverters. So really kind of bringing them into the simplicity of what it is that they're signing up for as they're installing solar. Today we're mostly talking about solar, but part of the program, as I've mentioned, we also have electric vehicles. There's a lot of confusion around vehicles as well, a lot of range anxiety. Thankfully, we have Tesla and Chevy coming out now with longer range vehicles, which is fabulous, and that's kind of interesting how it's shaping the discussion. I'll mention that or touch on that a bit more here in a minute. But again, there's still a lot of angst, anxiety, and confusion about what they're really getting themselves into and signing up for. Kind of, again, paralysis by analysis, making sure that people don't have too much to evaluate to help them make their decision. Our goal is to simplify their decisions so they can maximize their efforts. We don't want them to maybe just go solar. We want them to get the water heater and the pump and go solar and get an electric vehicle. So that, again, these are the things that in our utopia minds, we see them as the easiest way to achieve our longer goals, revitalize our neighborhoods and reduce our air pollution. So that's really what we're going for, is creating more vibrant neighborhoods for ourselves, more cohesive, positive community, and a clean environment, whether we're talking about air or water. One of the other barriers that we're finding is actually more on the solar company side. They're having really, really high costs with their marketing and customer acquisition. This could also turn into a little bit of a barrier for consumers because they find their marketing tactics to be very aggressive. Lots of phone calls, knocking on doors. So there's a bit of a collision happening within this. So those are some of the barriers. Thankfully, there's some things that are happening within the marketplace. The first trend that we're seeing, and some of us have talked a little bit about this, is that even though our solar adoption is definitely increasing on a national level, and thankfully California is still leading the way, we're still actually, last year we saw solar installations drop. And here in California, they dropped 8% just in 2016. So the first 4 bars that you're seeing there are the first 4 quarters of 2015, and the first 3 of 2016. And you can see as we went into the year of 2016, there was almost 41,000 solar installations across the state, and that fell towards the end of the year down to 35,000. So there's still some work that we need to do. There has been some theory that some of this could be due to market saturation. Kind of all that low-hanging fruit has already been picked. Those early adopters have already jumped on and installed solar and purchased their vehicle. Or of course, there can be a lot of other factors as well. I would imagine that this paralysis by analysis is happening as well. I actually use my mother as my baseline example. She's a businesswoman. She's really concerned about making sure that she's going to receive that return of investment on any investment that she's making. Thankfully, she listens to me around the dinner table, and she cares about the environment, and she ties that into her fishing life as well, and is really a steward for water conservation. This is a hard switch for her to make. I mean, just last week she bought a refrigerator, and it's not energy efficient because that one was going to be delivered 3 weeks after her regular one. So there's a lot of factors that we need to take into consideration within these trends. Good news with one of the trends that we're seeing, and we've been talking about this a bit more today, is the cost of solar, price per watt, is thankfully reducing dramatically. And this is what's to our advantage. This is definitely what's to our advantage. So with the prices falling and a lot of the incentives that are out there, there's no better time than now for people to go solar, to purchase that zero-emission vehicle. I personally find this to be a really exciting time for individuals. I see this is our opportunity to really commit ourselves to clean energy and to show that local efforts can really add up to what we're trying to make happen across our country in terms of adopting renewable energy. So now I'm going to take a minute and talk a little bit about the incentives that are already out there for installing solar. In order to understand how some of these incentives work, and again, I'm just going to go over the basics of this, really keeping it simple, trying to also kind of use it in the same language that we use as we're talking to, again, just common everyday folks, really giving them more access to the same information that we have. But I think it's important to take a step back and just quickly talk about how solar works. So currently, as you use electricity in your house without solar, your house is powered with AC electricity, alternate current electricity. As you install solar, as the sun hits the solar panels, it's creating what's called DC electricity. And that needs to go through an inverter from the solar panel to be inverted back into AC electricity so that your house can use it properly. And this is where the conversations of inverters and microinverters are really coming into play. I think just to quickly note, another trend that is taking place, and I think this falls into the importance of the inverter conversation these days. There's this year in 2017, they're expecting the market to flip with solar and seeing more people own their solar systems than people who are leasing. So it seems to be that leasing and PPAs are kind of going a bit out the door, and ownership is really starting to take over the market again. What this means for us is two things. One, that also puts more of the installations in the hands of regional and local developers. So it really shows our opportunity for economic development and job creation within that. Last year, one of our providers hired on new staff specifically to take on the SunShares capacity. So again, there's a lot of things that are happening within there. One of the other things that they're seeing as people are owning their systems is that's making a switch more from just regular inverters, which were typically closer to your electrical panel, your electrical box, where now they're using microinverters. So that's making these panels a little more efficient, a little or a lot, however you look at it, making them more efficient as those microinverters are inverting electricity right there at the source of the panel. So these are kind of game changers within the efficiency of the panels. Yes. So the importance of the inverters, kind of getting back into how solar works, is that as your solar system is producing electricity and you're consuming it, we also have perhaps an imbalance of how much energy that your system has produced versus how much you've consumed. So your electricity provider, maybe not everyone in this room, I should say, mostly has PG&E. Perhaps a lot of us have switched over. Actually, can I have a show of hands for how many people have made the switch from PG&E over to their local community choice aggregation program? Awesome. Okay. That's actually a little bit more than we would see during a workshop at one of the libraries. So most of us have PG&E, and as we are with PG&E, they will do a true-up at the end of the year, balancing out our credits and debits of our generation and consumption of energy. And PG&E will give you a rebate for any excess energy that you produce, and they're buying that from you to put back into the grid. And we'll talk a little bit more about some differences with how that process right there, net energy metering, works. I know that there's a new version of NEM 2.0. I am not going to be talking about that today. However, I'm sure there's some other people here in this room that can go into a lot more depth about those changes that we're seeing within there. One of the other solar incentives that's out there is PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy. This is an opportunity for people to put their solar installation as a line item on their property tax bill, and they can pay it off over time. This is not, again, something for everybody, but I think it's just really important to show that there's options that are out there. One of the other great incentives, probably the best incentive I believe that we have right now with solar, is our 30% federal tax credit. This was reinstated, so it will be valid through the end of 2019. After 2019, it will reduce down to 26%. Through 2020, and then in 2021 it'll go down to 22%. So it will phase out over time, and after 2021 there will no longer be a federal tax credit available for residential solar. I believe there will still be an ongoing federal tax credit for commercial But again, for residential, that will end. So again, there is no better time than right now to really be encouraging our communities to go solar. With the 30% federal tax credit, net energy metering seems to be improving and changing over time. So it's really now is a good time to get in before more changes are being made. Spoke about this a little bit, but I really believe that one of the other incentives we have right now for going solar are the community choice aggregation programs. And this is where we're talking about Marin Clean Energy, Peninsula Clean Energy, Clean Power SF. These are your alternatives to PG&E. One of the main differences of going solar with Marin Clean Energy, or MCE, for example, versus PG&E is, as I mentioned before, as you have your true-up, PG&E will give you a rebate that can be applied towards future bills, where most of the CCAs will actually give you cash for that excess. And so, again, that does depend within the CCA that's in your local area, but most of them are actually paying you out with cash and at 1 cent per watt more, I believe, than with PG&E. So we have all these barriers, and this is where I'm pretty excited that I feel like SunShares really helps to break through these barriers. So as I mentioned before, SunShares is a limited time group buying program offering discounts on residential solar and zero emission vehicles. One of the things that SunShares does is we're not just a market driver, but we're also an education and engagement tool. So one of the things that we do, I mentioned before, there seems to be a lot of paralysis by analysis, confusion in the market over how, like, there's so many companies, how do you know who to choose? And how do we know that the product they're offering me is the highest efficiency panel and the best bang for my buck? So one of the things that SunShares does is we issue a request for proposal out to the solar industry. We have pooled our group buying power amongst different cities and corporate employers that are participating in the program to help us conduct outreach. That outreach that we are conducting amongst our cities and corporate network is what's giving us that discount from the solar providers and the vehicle manufacturers. As we go out and conduct educational workshops, either at the city library on a Saturday or a lunch and learn at your company, we are helping to reduce those marketing costs. We're also helping to reduce their customer acquisition costs because we are helping the consumer bypass all the sales. They're not being bombarded, I should say, with just sales calls or someone knocking on their door. The first call that they're receiving is actually giving them a proposal, presenting to them exactly what solar is going to look like for their home, what it's going to cost them. More importantly, and this is the feedback that we received from the solar providers last year, is they're finding there's a lot of confusion amongst folks about their financing options. There are so many financing options. Not everybody has access to a tax advisor. So how do we walk them through what is the best financing option for them? So we at these workshops have the solar providers with us that have been selected through the RFP process and kind of, again, they've been pre-vetted. That pre-vetted process, one, really helps to narrow down the selection for the consumer. So they can have 2 or 3 side-by-side comparisons of what solar, again, would look like and cost for their home. It's also important to have these selected providers because at the educational workshops, we count on them. They're there directly helping to answer people's questions about those financing options and technical questions as well about the panels. And coming through us as a third party, seems to really add a lot of transparency to the process. Again, that pre-vetting aspect of the program really seems to be key to building trust with the consumers. Seeing that we've gone through and evaluated them on their longevity in the industry, their customer service, financing options, efficiency of their panels. So really, again, kind of going through with a fine-tooth comb. Last year was the first year that BC3 administered the SunShares program, and we were really excited with our first year's success and cannot wait to just kind of boost it up higher this year. Last year we had almost 150 cancellations or installations. We just had 2 cancellations is what I was about to say, so we're actually at 148. We had almost 150 installations last year, and that's just in a 3-month period. So really, really increasing that number locally. Fremont led the way, shockingly, with 22 installations. Even though Fremont does provide a lot of access and incentives for their community, there's just something about the Fremont community. Maybe I'm biased because I'm from there, but there really does seem to be something about that community in terms of getting it and kind of helping their own pockets along the way. Through the program last year, I think this is actually one of the biggest benefits for the cities, is that we had 1,800 people sign up through the SunShares program for more information. And that information that they're getting is kind of a lot. They can sign up for more information on solar installation, so hearing directly from the selected providers, getting more information about zero-emission vehicles. Last year, the program offered the Nissan Leaf and the new hydrogen fuel cell Toyota Mirai. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to really pool the resources of what you're trying to do within your own city and highlight that within the program. We're also working to educate them not just on their solar and vehicle options, but their clean energy options in general. So last year we talked a lot about with people, Marin Clean Energy, Peninsula Clean Energy, et cetera, and making sure that they knew what programs were available in their area, but then also taking it a step further this year, and we'll be talking a little bit along the way about electrification. And the way that we hope to address that, because it's a bit of a fine line for SunShares in all honesty. The reason it's a fine line is one of the benefits and values of SunShares is we simplify the process. Again, we're trying to undo the paralysis by analysis. And so therefore, by offering 1 to 2 products, kind of the peanut butter and jelly again, if you will, the foundation of everything that we're talking about, that really simplifies it for people. But we recognize the goals and the needs from our community as we're all pushing towards net zero energy. So one of the things that we're going to be adding in this year is a resources page on our website, linking people directly to a lot of the resources that are here in this room, and more so they can have direct information about electric water heaters and just the process, and trying to get them closer to the people that they need to be in contact with, or the information that they need to make a decision. And not just make a decision in their leisurely time, but make a decision now. Do this now. Again, now is the time. It's an energy revolution. So last year we had 37 outreach partners. An outreach partner is a city or corporate employer here in the Bay Area. The role of an outreach partner is really simple. This is how people find out about SunShares. It's really a word-of-mouth program. So whether you're a city or a company participating as an outreach partner, we just ask that you send out 2 communications a month. That could be through your social media networks, your email blasts, your newsletters, or even hosting an educational workshop where we would come and give a presentation about how solar works, talking them through the products and offerings of the program this year. We're still waiting to see if this will be confirmed through the RFP process, but we are researching right now the possibility of bringing in residential EV charging stations into the offerings, again, just to really support the zero-emission vehicle component of it. So that's it on outreach partners. And really, I think the only thing I'd have left to say, I think I've shared a lot about the barriers and the trends and really how SunShares kind of fills in and supports moving a lot of that forward. So I mentioned before, but SunShares is a limited time program. It's only open for 3 months. And open is registration. So that's when consumers, buyers can go to our website and just sign up for more information. Again, whether it's being put in touch with the solar companies, getting the discount code to go down and purchase a zero-emission vehicle. So you can talk to myself if you were interested in finding out more about this. I would also be curious to hear from you as well if there are any barriers or trends that you're experiencing that are really influencing it. We're hoping to talk about that a bit more with consumers this year to try to tie them in a more simpler way to the conversations that we're having here. So kind of creating more of these community-wide opportunities. I think, again, one of the other benefits of becoming an outreach partner is it really is an opportunity for you to strengthen your partnerships with other community groups in your area. Last year, this is actually how we were put in touch with BayREN down in the county of San Mateo. Multiple cities coming together to do joint workshops and inviting other community groups to complement our conversation. So coming and talking about home energy upgrade or having SunPower come and talk more in depth and more clear about the financing options. So there are ways that we can really kind of boost the conversations that we're having and again improve your partnerships with other community groups and kind of just spread the word, spread the love, spread the sunshine. So yeah, I think that concludes my presentation. Thank you.